think it's recording. All right. So three, two, one. Hi, folks. Thomas Hinton here with thomashinton.com. And today is another episode of Big Data, Big Questions. And so today's episode is another amazing career deep dive. Today we're talking to Valerie Harrison, somebody who I've worked with in the past, and we'll get into it in the interview around where we've worked together and some of the things and projects we've done. She's an amazing person. She's actually working right now in the cloud as a customer success engineer. So I thought this was a great area for us to kind of dig into what's going on from a cloud perspective around data analytics, and then also hear her journey as well as how she got into IT, enterprise development, and that whole ecosystem. So make sure you check out, and then if you haven't yet, go ahead and subscribe so that you never miss an episode of Big Data, Big Questions. And without further ado, let's jump right in. So 3, 2, 1. Valerie Harrison, welcome to the Big Data, Big Question show.
Hey, Thomas, thanks for having me on.
Awesome, man. This is great. How about you start off by just telling us, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Sure, yeah, I'd love to. I am currently a Google customer engineer. So I do work with Google Cloud and help our customers move to the operating model that is cloud and, evangelize our portfolio of products. So that's what I'm doing right now. Fairly recently came from Dell EMC, where I worked with Thomas. Yay!
So, Valerie, on this show, one of the biggest things that I think that the audience, we get feedback from is folks, and even for me, like one of my favorite things whenever I listen to podcasts or, interviews and everything in tech, especially, I love to hear people's background. And so how about you tell us a little bit about, what your background is, how you got involved in tech, just some of the, some of the basics around that.
Awesome. Yeah. I have a little bit of a different story. I took a kind of a roundabout route to technology. I actually went to University of Michigan for archaeology. So I was an archaeology and physical anthropology major. And I loved it. I loved looking at the bones and figuring out if it's Australopithecus or Homo erectus and all that cool stuff. And I still fondly remember that time. In fact, I was still talking to my kids today about, what's a sagittal crest? What does that mean for a human being? So, I mean, I love that. I was really passionate about it. And I went to go to grad school and, I rapidly came to a realization that if you're going to feed yourself, money isn't everything, but if you're really going to feed yourself and not be having to live in your parents' basement for the rest of your life, you probably should find something that pays a little bit better than archaeology. We were looking at a PhD to make about $20,000 a year, and I was like, I'm not sure I can support myself on that. And so I took a pause and was underemployed for a few years, and I worked in a bookstore. I love books. Fun fact, if you ever love books, don't ever work in a bookstore. It'll suck all the joy out of it for you. Trying to sell a product that you really love. But I did end up working in libraries, and I love books again. But I started to discover that there was something even more cool about libraries and about just the ecosystem. And that was really how all of these things are connected. And I started to get involved in, something really stupid. This is sound really dumb and make me sound really old, but I actually got involved in multi-user dungeons back in the day. So MUDs, which are, the text-based precursor to MMORPGs. And through that, I discovered, I need to learn some Linux skills and Unix skills, to be able to get into the servers. I was a whiz, so I learned how to mod a little bit. I was finding free books online back in the day when it was all just text-based through
bulletin boards. Is that
Gopher? Remember Gopher and Waze and FTP and all that, and a little bit of bulletin boards. So I started to become really fascinated with how all these systems interconnect and the plumbing and the glue and really not just the pieces and parts, but how it really connected everyone. I mean, I was gaming with people from Sweden and people from England and people all over the United States. And I become really passionate about understanding how it all worked. And so I started just digging in and figuring out how these things worked and educating myself and doing it. And was like, I need to get a technology. Like, this is cool. And I applied for a job on the help desk at University of South Carolina, which is where I was back then in the library system, and ended up getting hired. So I started at the very, very bottom at the help desk, and it didn't burn me out, and moved on to networking and desktop support, and then moved into data centers, and I was running the storage area network and exchange and firewalls and all that, became the data center manager, and then got promoted to the VP of IT ops. And so it's a very long journey from someone who just really wanted to dig up old bones into becoming a technologist.
So it's interesting. There's a couple of things I want to dig in there, definitely around it. But now I'm curious. So I've known you for a while. I didn't know. So you started off at the help desk at, or I guess IT help support, University of South Carolina.
Yeah.
Oh
Yep.
wow, it's pretty cool.
Yep. I was down there for a while.
So man, it seems like there's a lot of folks. I guess let me back up. So moving into a VP or data center manager, is that typically the kind of the career path? Like, because I've talked to a lot of folks. Erin Banks was on the show. She worked she worked at the help desk. Is that typically the path of where you see a lot of people? Like, if somebody's out there wants to be a data center manager, do they typically have to start off there?
It really depends. I mean, I think you build a lot of credibility starting at the bottom because you've been in the shoes of the people who are the face of IT. And so if you're in operations, if you're in the build run environment and that's what your career path is and that's what your skill set is, I think, understanding that, the help desk really is that face of IT to the customer, to the end user, the people who pay the bills, or even the executives. And I think, as I said, you build a lot of credibility there. You don't have to start there. I know a ton of people who jumped right in and said, I'm going to get my certifications and I'm going to go right into being, say the Microsoft engineer, or perhaps, get your CCNA and do the Cisco thing. Yeah. So it really, there's a lot of ways to get there. The really interesting thing I find about IT, especially in the operations side, is the fact that there's no degree to do what we do. I mean, there's no like, okay, go to college and you take this degree and then you're going to get this career. A lot of us are accidental technologists. And so there's just a lot of ways to get there. It's not a prescribed path, which I think is really cool. And it makes, I think, to use a kind of maybe overused term, it kind of democratizes IT and allows a lot of people to get into it.
You and I were talking a little bit about that before. I didn't know that your background was archaeology, so that's really interesting. It's
now
fun
you're gonna make fun of me forever.
It's fun doing these interviews because I find out more things. Like I found out somebody I worked with in the past, and a friend of mine, he political science background, right, into data engineer. So why is it? Because I was in the same spot, and I think we talked about it. You felt the same way. Why is it we feel that way when we're in college? That if I don't pick a data, like I was confused. Like I was so worried that my career would go down the wrong path if I chose not computer science, or I was computer information systems. And so I got almost finished with computer information systems. I was like, I'm never going to get a job because I didn't get a computer science degree, which I have gotten jobs. So why do we get like that?
I don't know. I think it may be a combination of, when you're a certain age, when you're young, things look very black and white. And, you see your whole life in front of you. And I think you see it as a binary choice. I can do this or I can do that. And I have 12-year-old twin boys, and I've tried really hard to instill in them that you don't have to know what you're going to be when you grow up. In fact, I have a guy I know who was a former customer, really great guy. He's a teacher, technologist. And he says the career that you're going to have in 5 years or 10 years has not been invented yet. So if you look at it through that lens, I think it really is more realistic. And I think, we get so wrapped up in, oh, we have to make the right choices because it's going to impact our whole lives. But I love the idea of, if you don't even know what's going to happen in 10 years and where you're going to be, or even what's available, it takes a lot of that pressure off. And I think it makes people, like, it's reassuring to me that I know, hey, 10 years, I could be doing something completely different. And I think you asked why we feel that way. I think it's biological. I think it's, we tend to see things, black or white. But I also think that, if we can get past that, it's a great opportunity to focus on what are transferable skills. What are the skills that are going to transfer to any career that's going to give you the outcome in life that you really want? What do you want in life? Do you want to have impact? Do you want to work, do you want to travel globally? Do you want to make enough money just to be comfortable? And I think, if you can look at it through that lens, it takes a lot of the pressure off, and it helps you focus yourself on the things that are going to serve you well no matter where you go.
Yeah, no, that's a good way to put it. I like it with the skills based. One of the things that I did, and it's a really been recent. I think in the last 3 or 4 years, I started looking at the types of things I want to do. And I'm always aspiring and looking, okay, where do you want to go in the next 3 to 5 years? And I started kind of looking at it from, what are the things I want to be doing, right? Like, I still want to be technical. The travel thing, right? Like, whether I want to travel globally, nationally, whether you want to speak. And then you look at those types of things, because that title or that role may say something, differently, right? Like, I think I've had different roles where I'm like a software engineer, but I was really a web developer, right? Like, I mean, but what does it matter if I'm a web developer or software engineer? It's like, I want to be listed as a software engineer, what I mean? So, I mean, I like that approach. I guess, kind of transitioning, I know this is one area that I'm interested in, because I didn't know about this role probably until about a year before I got the role. So I know you've been a sales engineer. It's how we met. So what is this? What is a systems engineer, sales engineer? Some places call it solutions architect. Like, how do you best describe that role? And how come most people don't know about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty niche career in that, someone who is a hairdresser, or someone who works on cars, or someone who doesn't work in technology, they don't experience us, like, they don't interact with us. But I think there's a lot of analogs to what we do in other industries. I really, really do. And I think it really comes down to, at the end of the day, you can list off all the skills and the certifications, but at the end of the day, there's like a few things that a systems engineer does. And I think it translates to other industries as well. They just call them different things, or look at them a little differently. And really, how I see it is, we explain technical problems, technical solutions in a very consumable way to the people who are going to be consuming it. And so, I find that a skill set that's really, really helpful is the ability to take a very hard technical concept and be able to make a story or an analogy to explain it to someone who may be writing the checks. The CFO might write a check, but yet, they need to understand why they're writing a check for, however millions of dollars. So really, it's around storytelling. It's around understanding. It's a lot about listening. I think the best systems engineers that I know are really good listeners. They are very good at seeing a problem and mapping out a solution, and then plugging in whatever we can do as salespeople, because we are salespeople as well as technologists, plugging in what we can do to help solve that problem and making a story around it. I've also been guilty of saying that we are the conscience of the sales team. So I don't know how true that is. I think, sales reps get a reputation for having happy ears and being like, oh, we can sell whatever. And I think part of our charter is to make sure that whatever that we sell, like it's our reputation. At the end of the day, we're selling our reputation as well as a product, and understanding, making sure that we do the due diligence to not only tell the story, but make sure whatever we're selling and whatever we're putting in front of the customer is actually going to do what we promise. No matter what the sales rep says, no matter what product, says, oh, it's it's on the roadmap, it'll be there next year. We need to make sure that what we're selling is going to work. And so it's a lot about how you can articulate and how credible you can be, and how ethical, honestly, that you can be as well.
Yeah, and I think part of it is because it's so challenging tech. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
the longer I've been in tech, or maybe it's just, I don't know if it's the older I'm getting, but man, it's so complicated. Like all the things, like even like, I'm not even talking work related. I'm talking like home automation, all the things that I'm doing, at home, just to, just to make sure things work. And I don't know how people who aren't in tech do it. So, it's for us, yeah, the art of storytelling and then ensuring, hey, that is going to work, but you have to have port 70, 99 open or something, you know what I'm saying? Something as little as that can,
All those
can throw the
stupid
whole
little
project
details.
off and make you
Yeah.
look bad. It's like, no, 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 this is, this is how to do it. And you can be the
Mm-hmm.
hero sometimes, so that's great. um I think, one of the things that I kind of noticed about you is the art of storytelling, but also the a lot of the folks that come on here, obviously they're comfortable speaking, right? Because they're happy to get either like speaking, have good at it, present. So how much, when has that always been something that that you've always kind of sought out, is to be a storyteller? And I know you've spoken on stage, and I mean, to be an SE or a solutions architect, you have to stand in front of people and talk. Is that something that you always had? Did you learn it, or what's kind of the story?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I like to say I'm a professional extrovert, meaning that by nature I'm very introverted. I don't like the attention. I don't like to put myself out there. I would never, I actually did used to sing in a band. So I used to sing in a punk band a long time ago. So I mean, I have been on stage and I have done those things, but being in a band is very different than standing up there and putting out your real self. And I will tell you that that was probably one of the largest things I struggled with when I started as an engineer, as a sales engineer. I was used to being the person behind the keyboard. I was, writing the firewall rules, and I was, creating DNS systems and whatever it is I had to do, and making myself. And that was one of the biggest things I thought. I don't know if I can do the job, because
Mm-hmm.
that public speaking, that is a barrier, I think, for a lot of people. And I didn't know that I would be good at it. My mom was a teacher for years. She's like, "Oh, it's easy." I was like, "Well, yeah, you've been doing it for 30 years, getting up in front of people and talking." And I will tell you that even for someone who doesn't do it naturally, this is a skill you can learn. And I mean, you can see the giant, 8 foot by 4 foot glass magnetic whiteboard back there. I literally started on my kid's easel. So think about, the kid with the play, the art paper and crayons. I literally started whiteboarding and doing presentations on my kid's easel. And it was like a muscle that I had to develop. And I will never forget one of my very first big presentations I had to do, and it was in front of, you guys, you probably remember, like the old beef specialist team.
Mm-hmm.
And they were bringing forward a whole new portfolio of products, and we as SEs had to come and learn it and then present it back to them. And they were like VPs there, and my knees were literally knocking. Like literally, I said, I know that's what they mean by knees knocking. They really do knock together. I didn't know that. And so it's um, it's something that you can practice and something that you can develop. And it's funny because even to this day, I literally, like, funny you should bring this up. Yesterday, I had to give a presentation to a customer, and they didn't. I knew it was going to be important. I knew it was their introduction to what is Google, from a technical perspective. They've heard all the, executive level messaging, but I had to give it from a product and a technical perspective. And I was nervous, and have you ever seen the Amy Cuddy TED Talk about power poses and how to prepare?
I think so.
Okay, it's to everybody out there, if you want to go and look it up, Amy Cuddy did a TED Talk about, and I can't remember what it was called, but she just talks about, if you're hunched over and you're closed up, you're going to be stressed. But if you can do power poses and feel strong and powerful and open, it's going to release all kinds of chemical things that I can't describe because I'm not a medical person, and it will make you more confident. And so I literally, before the presentation, I went to the back of my office and I practiced my power poses. I got big and I got strong, and I did it, and I got great feedback and applause. And it turns out that there were 400 people on that call.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
I am so glad I didn't know that going in, because I don't think I would have been. I thought it was going to be like 10. Wow. And apparently they've sent it to the entire company, and there were VPs on there. So my point is that there's techniques that you can do as well as muscle memory to make yourself feel better about it. And sometimes just not looking at the audience is the best thing. And I didn't look at the participants list, and it was a good thing.
Yeah. One of my favorite things to do, I don't do this so much for like virtual conferences now, which is all I do. But so one of the things that one of the things that I like to do is, and it's been useful for me, is to fast. Like some of my best sessions ever, like I may have been like 20 hours, without eating. So like I'll go into it because you get some kind of energy or something. I'd read it somewhere before, like don't eat or something, and then I was like, I'll try it. So I'd been doing the intermittent fasting, so I just took it along. And then there was this one executive briefing I did, and I hit 24 hours because like I have a timer that would track it. But man, you just get like, how like you get that, like when you're doing a good job and it's just kind of just coming out, like you're like, I'm going to open my mouth and I don't even know what's coming out. It's going to be true and everything, but you have to be quick on your feet, and you're just really
yes.
It's like that. Maybe it just gives me something else to think about. I don't know. Maybe that's
what do they call it? Like pain transference. Like if you have a pain, give yourself a pain somewhere else, and it'll make you not think about the first one. Yeah. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. I've never heard that before. I think I would pass out.
Yeah. No, that's I did that. So the most I've ever spoken in front of, I think it was close to. I think it was like 1,000 or 2,000 people. It was somewhere in the middle, and that's what I did. I'd always wanted to do a keynote, and I had like a 5 or 15 minute keynote in New York. But nice. I fasted for that one too, just because I was super nervous. And nice. 400 on a webinar, that's awesome. I think the most. I was
blown away. I was like, wait, what? Crazy.
So I guess, just to sum that part of our conversation up, are you encouraging, you would encourage folks to get outside of their comfort zone and speak a little more, even if they're not wanting to go into a solutions architect or SE role?
Absolutely. And, it's funny, one of my jobs way back in the day was some network administration job that I was doing. The company had a Toastmasters in the company, like they had their own chapter, and they required everyone to go and do at least one session. And I was like, I was dying, but it was an amazing experience. And I think it doesn't matter if you're going to be an SE or if you're going to be an executive, or even, when I was in operations, if I were going to ask the business to make a big investment in technology, and I did quite a bit, we would have to put together a justification, which included a presentation that we would do either in front of the executive leadership team or the board, and go through, the outcomes and the solutions and all of that. And I think that back to transferable skill sets,
Yeah.
that's a huge transferable skill set. There's a lot of people who think they can't, and I say think they can't because I know they can. I have a friend who is a mutual friend of yours, and I won't mention his name on this video, who doesn't think he can speak in public. And he's like, well, I'll do anything. And he's looking at going for another role. And he's like, well, I can do everything, but you gotta tell me that I'm not going to have to speak in public. And I said, well, you don't have to, but what a great way to build your brand. And what a great way to show how awesome you are. And what a great way to communicate all of the really cool things that are going on in your head and all the neat things that you're doing, to get up there and just crush it and give a great show, even if it's just off the cuff. And it doesn't have to be, and slides help, that's great, but it's like, it's the most transferable skill set I can think of, is the ability to communicate what you're doing and the importance to everyone around you. Even my kids. I mean, shoot, I give my presentations in front of my kids sometimes.
Yeah.
They think it's weird.
I don't think there's any job rec I've ever seen that doesn't have like a little bullet, and I think it's just they copy and paste it from everyone. Everyone is like communication skills. There's something about it in each one. So,
Yes.
I want to transition into some questions around the cloud. So,
Sure.
with your background and the role that you're in right now, is there a shortage out there of cloud engineers, cloud developers, and cloud architects?
Yeah, and I think there's a couple ways that you can look at this. Number one, I'm not going to recite any stats or anything. I'm sure people can look it up, but the cloud adoption is really huge, and there's a lot of market shift that way. And so I think that with all that happening, and just to tell you, like, when I talk about Google and I talk about cloud, our perspective is that cloud's not a place. It's not a thing. It's not a place where you go and do things. It's an operating model. It's a way of running IT. It's a culture. So it's a people thing as well as a technology thing. And I think in two ways there are some gaps that I'm seeing. Number one are people, like me, like you, who can articulate that can articulate what is the cloud and how do you get there. And so, transferable skill sets, people who can take the complex ideas of cloud and communicate them. I think that's a gap. I think that there's a huge gap there. And I think I would encourage people, if you can speak to that, if you can understand what it is that's, that we're trying to do, there are, I mean, it's just growing. There's going to be all kinds of opportunities. And then number two, I think that there's, again, on the consumer side and on the general public side, really there is a shortage of people who understand that cloud operating model and can execute on it. And so for people who are looking to build, if it's a brand new person looking to either change careers or someone who is early in their career, there's a huge amount of growth in that space. Even if you work in a data center, even if you work for a company that is not going to a Google or an Amazon, that operating model is growing and is really important. Understanding DevOps, understanding infrastructure as code, that's kind of where the puck is going. And I feel like there's not enough people right now. And just to go back, like, I did presentations. I did a presentation years ago. I used to work for bankruptcy court back in Tennessee. And I did a presentation on the lack of technology skills and interest in people, and how, we really need to push this, and not to get on my diversity high horse, but, to push this amongst all groups, because there's a lack of representation, as well as just a lack of people who want to do these things. And I think that's a huge opportunity. I mean, the doors are wide open. If people want to jump in and learn and do those things, I think that there is a ton of opportunity for people to come in, make a great living, and do something really cool.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I get people reach out to me, and even just like mentoring family members and stuff. And of course, Thomas is always like, "Well, you should get involved in tech. Like, you can start doing a website right now." So, but following on that, so I think there's a shortage. I think there's a huge opportunity for folks who, if you're looking for something and you want to land, you want to land a role pretty quick. I think cloud architect. I think cloud engineer, those types of
Mhm.
roles. So Valerie, what do you think are the top tech skills? So like if somebody's watching this and they're like, I'm sold, like what are a couple of specific areas, and they can be different apps or services. But what would you recommend for them to learn, and kind of just to get their foot in the door?
Yeah, and I think that really goes to, where do you see yourself in the spectrum of cloud? There's a lot of people out there who come from an operations background like I did. And I think there's a huge opportunity to learn infrastructure as code, learning about Terraform, learning about, how to deploy infrastructure in an operational and a repeatable way. And then taking that a step further, I think that I've talked to big customers, huge customers who are on this journey, a huge interest in getting into like a CI/CD pipeline. So being able to continuously integrate, continuously deploy applications. So all the way from the infrastructure to actually deploying the code in a very repeatable and in a very automated way that takes out human error, and in a way that doesn't,
Oh,
really have the
poor
pager.
humans.
I know. We're automating. Let's not get into. I could go on my soapbox for an hour on that. Let's not go down that path. But yeah, there's a lack there, and people who, if you just took a scripting class like that
Yeah.
sort of thing, that's a transferable skill. If you can learn scripting, and scripting isn't rocket science, you learn scripting, there's a huge opportunity for you. And then all the way into the app development side, which
Hmm.
is definitely not my strong point, but anywhere along that spectrum, there are needs. And I think, starting with that cloud architect, getting your feet wet with a cloud architect and understanding what it takes, especially for operations type people, that's really key to understanding that operating model. And then you can build on from there. Coursera has ton, a ton of content out there. Pluralsight, ton of content out there. Um, if you take a broad foundational course, you can start to pick apart, what am I interested in? What do I care about? Where do I think that I'm gonna have skills that'll work with this. So that's what I would encourage.
No, that's awesome, and I think yeah, definitely, definitely from the operation side is one area that a lot of folks don't typically don't think about, but there's a huge opportunity there.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Absolutely.
so as we kind of wrap this up, and I want to take, and I know just from working with you, I mean, like I said, I know your background, but for the folks in the audience, like what are some of the things that because I know, throughout your career, like you continue to grow and you continue to learn. What are some of the things or tips and tricks that you use to continue growing and learning?
Yeah, sure. I mean, part of it's is terror. Like, oh my God, I got to get this presentation on
Fear,
something
it's
tomorrow.
fear.
Fear is the biggest motivator. No, but I had a boss who said, I'm one white paper away from the customers. I'm one white paper ahead of them.
Okay.
Um, so part of it's demand. If you're in a place where you need to do something, that's really motivating to get to know that thing. It's also just it's being curious and it's being passionate. It's about, and I think you, Thomas, were a big inspiration for me moving into, because I did some work on the AI side of the house when I was at Dell, and it's still a huge passion for me. And I credit you with inspiring me to put myself out there. So finding people who have that passion and can mentor you along the way is a great way to be inspired, and then be curious and let your passions lead you down that path. Find a use case, find an outcome.
Yeah.
Sometimes learning for learning's sake feels really burdensome. Find an outcome. I have a friend who decided, I want to learn more about AI. He's like, you know what, I'm going to take a ton of pictures of my kids, and I am going to train a neural network to identify which ones are my kids. And he did it, and he made a whole deck and a white paper about it. And he's like, well, this is just stupid. I was like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. You just, this is your like PhD thesis. So finding an outcome and then finding the skill sets that go ahead and do that. There's a ton of, there's just the World Wide Web has just changed my life. It's changed everyone's life. And it's not just all kitten pictures, though there's a lot of really good kitten pictures and memes out there. I love them. I'm the meme queen. But there are so many resources out there to find your passion and then execute on it, learn those skills and actually do them. Free coding lessons. Google has a ton of things around. You want to do AI and not have to learn to code. Here's how to get started with image recognition. So I would really encourage people just to be curious and see what's out there.
Yeah, there was a good course. I think I did a video on it too, and in the group that we were involved in, that's one of the ones that I recommended from Google. I think it's their machine learning course. It's all free. They give you, I think I'm going to say the name wrong. You'll probably correct me, but it's like Codex or something like that, where you could actually type it in, and so it was just a free resource. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's a ton of great stuff on there. Well, Valerie, this has been awesome. Thanks for taking the time. Is there, folks want to get in touch, folks want to follow you, you're on the socials. What's the best way for them to connect?
Sure. Yeah, I'm really bad, and I know you've kind of chat about this. I'm really bad about doing blogs and things like that, and I'm really busy right now, so I haven't been as out there as I should. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. I love following my favorite people, including you, and seeing what's out there. I stay in touch with a lot of people on LinkedIn, so that's probably the best way to reach out. And hopefully, I will get off my duff and have some content.
Okay, and I'll make sure to put your LinkedIn in the text here. So, well, thanks
Awesome.
again, Valerie.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you so much, Thomas. I am so glad that I got to talk to you. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks for coming on.